Hello, this is Anthony with Growth Central, and today I'm going to introduce you to the wonderful game of chess. Now, if you clicked on this video, you might be looking for the basics of chess, and you've come to the right place. In this video, we're gonna address all the information you need to start playing chess. And if you feel you already know the basics of chess, feel free to skip this video and watch my other videos. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Now, let me start by telling you the main objective of playing chess. Your ultimate goal must be to destroy, or maybe in a more appropriate term, checkmate your opponent's king. Now, let's get more familiar with the board and the pieces. Now, this is a board of chess. White gets to play first. Each player gets 8 pawns, a king, a queen, 2 horses, 2 bishops, and 2 rooks. Now, let's start with the most basic. Let's start with the pawn. Now, pawns usually move 1 square to the front. But as their first move, they can choose to move 2 squares to the front. Now, pawns attack the 2 squares to the left and right of their path. So, if black would have moved this pawn here, white can take. Now, you know how pawns move and attack other pieces. Now, the pawns have an extra feature that is a little bit complex, but I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. Now, let's imagine that white wanted to push their f2 pawn 2 squares to the front. Black has the option to take that white pawn as it has moved 1 square to the front. Like so. And this is called en passant. Now, let's talk about the bishops. Bishops are to be considered like snipers. They are long-range pieces, and they move on the diagonals. Now, as you can see, this bishop in the middle of the board can access any of these squares. The bishop is worth 3 points and is considered the more powerful minor piece. Now, on to the other minor piece, the horse. Now, the horse moves in L shapes. Its trajectory is composed by 8 different L's. Its trajectory is composed, now this is the first L, the second L, and so on. It hits all of these squares. Now let's imagine that there were pawns in front of this horse. The horse doesn't need permission to go to these squares. It can jump over these pieces, and hence its name, the horse. Now, onto the major pieces, the rook. The rook is worth 5 points. The rook walks in horizontal and vertical shapes. It hits all of these squares. Rooks are very useful for endgame strategies. Now, let's jump onto the queen. Now, the queen is the most powerful piece you have on the board. You want to hold on to that piece. The queen is worth 9 points. Its movement combines the rook and the bishop. Now, if you want to take that up to the board, now, if you want to look it up on the board, it's going to go diagonally, horizontally, vertically, and the other diagonals. So, a queen in the middle of the board can pretty much cover up the whole board. And this is what it will look like. Now, this is what a queen in the middle of the board looks like. This piece is considered overpowered. That's why it is worth 9 points. Now, the king is the piece you want to protect the most, because it's the piece that would decide if you win or lose the game. The king can go in any direction, just 1 square to that direction. Now, that will look something like this. The king can go to any of these squares. Now, the king is not made to attack other pieces, rather to run from attackers. We're almost done with the basics. There's only one concept you need to get familiar with, and that is castling. Your king has to always go to a safe spot where other pieces cannot target it. And that's why castling was invented. Castling removes the king from the middle of the board. There are basically 2 rules to castle. First, you have to develop the pieces between your king and your rook and leave it empty. Second rule, the king and the rook should not move to any different square than the square they spawned on. Next, to castle, the king moves 2 squares to the right and the rook moves 2 squares to the left, imprisoning him into safety. Now the same thing can be done on the queen's side, where the king moves 2 squares to the left and the rook comes out, locking him into safety. And that's about it for your basic chess tutorial. Now you're ready to go out, start playing games and experimenting. Good luck!